Three Ohio State football games that will shape the 2024 college football season.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to a Wednesday Hump Day edition of Locked On Buckeyes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, here on Wednesday, June 12th in the year 2024. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast, and today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. One thing about Ohio State in every single season is that their games are going to get a lot of attention. It doesn't matter if the Buckeyes are playing Michigan, if they're playing Rutgers, or if they're playing Akron. The Buckeyes games are going to get a lot of attention. And at this point in the offseason, we know what teams are going to be, or as far as their rosters, we know what the rosters are going to look like. Yes, there could be players acquired via the transfer portal even this time of year, but for the most part, most of your teams, they're done. They're not going to add anybody else. Not picking up no more walk-ons, and a guy that's a walk-on that could play in the fall. This is it. And with this being it, makes me wonder, it makes me think, if there are any Ohio State football games that will shape the college football season in the fall, and if there are, what are the top three games? And there are three games in my mind that easily will shape the Buckeyes, not just the Buckeye season, but college football as a whole. Number one is the Michigan game. And that goes without just, when they take away from what happened the past 3 years, when you take away from Ryan Day and the struggles he's had recently beating Michigan, and just look at this year, the landscape of the Big Ten, the landscape of college football, the landscape of everything going on in the sport, this is the game. That's why it is called the game. All eyeballs are going to be on Big Noon. They're going to be on Fox, 12 noon Eastern, the Saturday after Thanksgiving. And the outcome of this game not only has implications on who is going to play in the conference championship game, because I believe, and I think you believe, this is one of those games that can really, hey, Ohio State cement your spot in the Big Ten Conference Championship game. Here, this is the game to do it in. You could easily be going into this game 11-0. Go into there, play the Wolverines, and if you lose again, you could be up out of playing in the conference championship, which means there's no bye in the playoff, because if you're 11-1 as Ohio State, you're making a 12-team playoff. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You're going to do it no matter what. So if you're 11-1, you don't have a bye. Just thinking about this scenario here, well, if you don't have a bye, you still make the playoff, well, you may be able to host a game, but you're going to go up against an opponent that, well, is probably a little bit closer to you than you would want in your first game in the playoff as far as competitiveness of the game. Now, let's go to the other side. If Ohio State wins this game, and let's just say for the same scenario, they're going into this game 11-0, wow, what? Now what? You're undefeated. Now what? You're playing in the conference championship game. No matter what. Now what? Let's say you win that game. Now what? You get a bye in the playoff. And in a year where it's expanded, where teams can play up to 17 games, if you could have one less game, a longer break in between the Big Ten Conference Championship game and the first game in the playoff, that's very beneficial for you as a player, for the team, and for your chances to win the national championship when this is a natty or bust season. When it is a natty or bust season, you need to be very, very careful about what happens, about how you handle your body, how you rest, how you take care of yourself, the nutrition, the therapy that you do to take care of your body from the time you wake up until the time you go to sleep, and even the amount of sleep you get, what you put in your body, and all of those things there. You have to be particular and very, very picky when it is a natty or bust season. And if you have the opportunity to have a little bit extra rest, to have a little bit more time off, to allow Ryan Day, when December is such a big month for recruiting, now Ryan Day also realizes if we get a bye, this gives me more time to not stress about game preparation on the early National Signing Day. Bingo. There's so many things on this game when you look at just this upcoming season. This is even with an expanded Big Ten, 18 teams, 4 teams on the West Coast, and USC and UCLA and Oregon and Washington. And now what are you going to find? If you win the Big Ten in this upcoming season, it might be one of the most grueling or one of the bigger accomplishments that a Big Ten team has had in quite some time as far as in conference play. Yeah, it's a bigger thing, bigger conference, but also you don't have the divisions. Taking divisions away is even better. You're going to play a better team in the conference championship game, regardless of where they are geographically. It could be Ohio State, Michigan in the conference championship game. We don't know. It could be Ohio State and USC. We don't know. It could be Ohio State and fill in the blank school, regardless of where they are geographically in the US of A. This is one of those things that in the upcoming season, just look at the landscape and the storyline. This game is always going to shape the season, no matter what. And if you're trying to rank the top 5 or top 10 games that will shape college football as a whole, this game's on the list no matter what. No matter what. This game's going to be there. Now, let's add to what is more context for the situation. Outside of 2024, what do you have in this game? Michigan has been in control of the rivalry. Michigan has won 3 games in a row. Michigan cheated. They still won last year. And I think if you ask anybody, and I'll be someone to tell you this without really thinking about cheating or not, doesn't matter if the Michigan Wolverines cheated or if they did not cheat. I still think Michigan was the better team all 3 years. And it hurts me to say that. It pains me. But when I look at how Ohio State played in 2021, how they played in 2022, and how they played in 2023, even if Michigan is not one of the upper echelon teams, even last year they went undefeated. They had a really soft schedule, but just being honest with you, they beat Alabama, beat Washington. I mean, they did some things there, even late in the year, where you're like, oh, they did some really good things. And so this fact here about this team, Ohio State on paper is better than Michigan. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat that. They're better than Michigan. Ohio State on paper has the better head coach. Because Sherrone Moore is one of those guys that is unproven, inexperienced. Ohio State on paper has the better quarterback, has the better running backs. Offensive line, toss up, tight end, not really sure there. Receiving rooms, Ohio State defense. That's where things get interesting. Because you know the thing in this game, the team that has more rushing yards wins the game, whoever wins the ground game. And that's where things get interesting here. And speaking of shaping the season for college football, this game will also shape the seasons for Michigan and Ohio State. That's number one. The first game on my list as far as Ohio State games that will shape the 24 season, it's the game Thanksgiving weekend, that Saturday after Thanksgiving, 12 noon Eastern. It's on Fox. Number 2 on the list, it's not a team on the East Coast of the country. We'll dive into number 2. Can't let the cat out the bag yet. Stick around to find out who it is. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. The finals are currently in Dallas, Texas. A lot of you are like me, and you probably think it's going to be a sweep. No matter what, there are at least 2 more games left. And if you're in Dallas trying to decide if you and the boys or you and the family are going to get out to go watch game 3 or game 4, I would say, hey, make sure you tap into Gametime. They have numerous ways to make your ticket buying experience easy, and they'll help you save money too. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guarantee. This episode is brought to you by Billiards Plus. Billiards Plus has the best selection of pool tables, game tables, shuffleboard tables, and more. And the best service in Central Ohio. Everything you need for in-home and even backyard entertainment is at Billiards Plus. Billiards Plus carries the best pool tables from Brunswick, Alhassan, Canada, billiards, and more. And the grills, whether you like charcoal or gas or wood-fired, Billiards Plus has a perfect setup for all grillers. They are family owned and operated. And when you talk to the staff at Billiards Plus, you know you're talking to an expert who won't steer you wrong. No matter the season, Billiards Plus has you covered for all your indoor and outdoor entertainment needs. Kenny, Sarah, and the whole staff will always go above and beyond to give you the best customer service in the industry. Billiards Plus. Visit their showroom on Dublin Center Drive in Dublin. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Number 2 on my list when I think about the Ohio State games that will shape the college football season, it's when the Buckeyes go out to Autzen Stadium and play the Oregon Ducks in Eugene, Oregon. You heard myself and Mo Murphy talk about this yesterday on yesterday's show, and if you missed that show yesterday, definitely go back and tap into that and listen to it, enjoy it in its entirety. Mo and I dive into Oregon, the Big Ten Championship, Buckeyes being favored to win the games, and the different factors there. It's a lot of good stuff there. Everydayer John called it. And if you want to join the Everydayer Club, now's a good time. There's plenty of room for you. But we talked about Oregon, and Oregon, the team, what they bring to the table, how they stack up against Ohio State. And that game is the number 2 game for me when it comes to games that Ohio State's playing this year that will shape the college football season. And when you think about this game, it's in a part of the season where you kind of start to separate the pretenders and the contenders. It's October 12th. The broadcast company and the kickoff time have not been announced yet. And so once that does happen, we will let you know. But I do think, just like Mo mentioned, it'll be a midday Eastern, 3:30 Eastern kickoff, or a kickoff in the evening, either 7:30 or 8. I don't believe you'll get a 9 p.m. Eastern time kickoff. I believe it'll be at 8 o'clock on Fox, maybe 7:30 on NBC. If NBC happens to get this massive game, woo, they gonna love them ratings, because this game here, there's so much on the line. Think about in particular seasons where you say, oh, that team is going to be contending for the national championship. Not just conference championship, but for the national championship, which is the ultimate goal for Ohio State in this season. They said natty or bust. So the ultimate goal is to go out there and win a natty every single year. And think about what you do. Ohio State goes out to Oregon. Ohio State goes out there, has the toughest, most physical game they played all season to date. And this is also realizing they play Iowa before they play Oregon in the upcoming season. That game is actually a week before in Columbus. So you want to think about physical play and fundamentally sound play. You're going to get that against Oregon. Offense, hopefully, is a little bit better for the Hawkeyes. But now you got to go to Eugene. This is one of those games where Ryan Day is going to be able to really get a good handle on how tough this team is, how physically and mentally tough they are. Yeah, you get it against Iowa, but Oregon is one of those teams that's contending for not only the Big Ten Conference Championship, but they're also contending for the national championship. And I think they are, I know, they're one of my preseason teams that I am picking to be in the college football playoff at the end of the season. Haven't put that group of 12 together yet, but that's where we stand right now. And if Ohio State wants to do one thing this year, outside of the goals they already have. One of their goals will automatically get them a bye in the playoff. And if you want to bye in the playoff, win this game. Now, also realizing the first 4 teams or the top 4 highest seeded conference champions in the upcoming season. Oh boy, these words are just coming out so slowly at times and jumbled up. The 4 highest ranked conference champions get a bye. I am not a fan of the system. This is the system they're using. And when that is the case, you need to win this game. You have to. Now, if I'm Ross Bjork, the new AD at Ohio State, would I want to host a playoff game in Columbus? Absolutely. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I know Gene Smith was saying, hey, for some of us that are in the Midwest that, well, will hit inclement weather, how about we move to a neutral site to play the game? He threw out Detroit in a dome. It threw out Indianapolis, Lucas Oil Stadium with a retractable roof. And I'm sitting here thinking, sir, do you really want to take a road trip and play a neutral site game when the committee is trying to reward you for what you did in the regular season? It don't make no sense. Not at all. And I've heard people say and provide arguments for, a primetime game in November or December would not be great. Ohio State would, miss me with that. Look, a primetime game in December. Imagine, here's a scenario for you. Imagine Oregon and Ohio State meeting twice in a season, once in the regular season and then once in the playoff. The second time they meet is a home game for Ohio State in the shoe. Hey, they met in the regular season. Ohio State won that game. Oregon comes to the shoe. Now, granted, they deal with the elements in Oregon, but, buddy, we all know how the Midwestern winters hit. It's a little bit different. Now, it's also different out there in Oregon as well. So I'm not trying to be someone saying, oh, this man don't know nothing, man. He ignorant or not. No. I ain't never been out there, but I know it's different out there too. This is one of those games. You're also able to find out how ready Will Howard is, who I think is going to be the quarterback, to be QB1 and to lead Ohio State to the promised land this year. You'll find out, hey, we did a lot with the backfield. What works, what does not work against a very physical team in Oregon. Hey, when it comes to the defense, what works and what does not work. You've had games previously before that to figure that out, and you now got to put it together on one of the biggest tests that weekend, one of the biggest tests any team will face that season. It's Oregon. It's weird to say Oregon is in the Big Ten. It is weird that these teams have only played 10 times in the history of the two teams being in college football. The last time they played was 2021. The last time they played, the Ducks won the game. That was also Oregon's only win in the history of these two teams playing. Buckeyes are 9-1 in the series. The first game was played in 1958 in the Rose Bowl. The Buckeyes won that game 10-7. The Buckeyes won the very first CFP National Championship game against Oregon, beat them by 22 points. They've also met previously in the Rose Bowl in 2010. Buckeyes won that game 26-17. So the Buckeyes win big games against Oregon. Unfortunately, a regular season game was in the shoe the last time these two teams played. A lot of things that did not go right for the Buckeyes in that game. I'm hoping the Buckeyes defense shows up and shows out in so many ways that we did not see the last time these two teams played. It's the number 2 team on the list of games that will shape the 2024 college football season. There's one more team on the list. And some of y'all that know me very well, know how the show goes, might know what I am thinking right now. One way we are trying to enhance the listenership or the viewership for every Locked On Buckeye listener, it is the Locked On Buckeye subtext. This is a way for you to communicate with me and also me with you throughout the week. There'll be Q&A sessions we'll have throughout the week where I throw out questions, you provide answers, and back and forth. Also, there'll be subtext Q&As here where the questions will come from you, our tech subscribers. There will be news and updates and analysis, especially during the recruiting period we're currently in. The Locked on Buckeyes subtext. You can click the link in the show notes to sign up, or you can send a text to 614-587-7853. When you get the first text, you can save the number right there in your phone and just have a good old time. 14-day free trial when you sign up, and then after that, it is $4.99 a month. 2 games down, 1 game to go. We're talking about 3 games three Ohio State football games specifically that will shape the 2024 college football season. The first one is Thanksgiving weekend. The second one is October 12th. The third one is November the 2nd in Happy Valley, and it is against the Penn State Nittany Lions. And many of you might say, Jay, it's James Franklin. We know how those games go. We know what they do there. We understand what Penn State is. I mean, they got Julian Fleming, who might be the number 1 receiver. That doesn't really shake us. They got some good guys on defense that maybe might make us shake in our boots. Drew Aller, don't really trust him. The backfield, okay, got talent back there. Offensive line, let's see how good you can do against Hamilton and Sawyer and Williams and Tuimoloau and Jackson Jr. and Curry and Canoe and others. And Tywone Malone, can't forget you either. I think he's one of those guys that gets forgotten in the D tackle rotation. Penn State is one of those teams. Now, this one, I do think this outcome, this game, could ultimately be one of those things that knocks one of the 2 teams we're speaking of outside of contention for the playoff. Because I told somebody all the time, Penn State is almost every single season a lock to be a 10-2 football team. They're going to lose to Michigan. They're going to lose to Ohio State. That's 10-2. I mean, James Franklin has a pretty good gig right now where you can go into the season, you can automatically say you got 2 L's, and what else is going to happen? You're still going to be one of the better teams in the sport. That's a pretty good gig. A lot of college football teams and coaches will say, well, Penn State, no. Buddy, you can go 9-3, 10-2, and keep your job. It's been a long time since Penn State's won a national championship under Joe Paterno. Keep that in mind when talking about and saying, well, Penn State this, Penn State that. No, James Franklin has a pretty good gig right now. It's a pretty steady gig and a really good football team out there in Happy Valley. These 2 teams are also teams that I do think are in the top tier, the upper tier in the sport. Right now, for me, it is Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, Penn State as far as the top tier in 2024. And all 4 of those teams, to me, I do think have a realistic shot. 2 of them, of those 4, will realistically have an opportunity to make the Big Ten Conference Championship game. And let's just say this game on November 2nd is one of those games that, well, Ohio State wins, Penn State loses. Penn State could possibly not only be out of contention for the Big Ten Conference Championship, but if they slip up and lose another game, they could also find themselves outside of the playoff. Now, the weird thing about this year, with there being no divisions, Penn State opens up. They go to West Virginia to play the Mountaineers. It's a rivalry game. It's going to be on Fox, 12 noon Eastern. Honestly, I'm looking forward to that game myself and watching that one. But their schedule really is not that difficult. Now, here's the difficult part for Penn State. They have UCLA at home. The following week, they go to USC, got a bye week. After the bye week, they go to Madison, Wisconsin. They play Ohio State at home. They play Washington at home. That stretch there between Wisconsin, Ohio State, and Washington, then having to go to USC. This could realistically be an opportunity for Penn State to make sure they're 11-1 and one of those teams that is actually earned, not just given. Big Ten West teams have earned, I mean, they've earned it too via the rules, but the rules are whack, has earned it in a different way, in a very unique year, the right to play for a conference championship in the Big Ten. I think right now, I ain't got the betting odds pulled up. I don't really care. My eyeballs tell me. I know I prefer the eyeballs over Vegas numbers or over what somebody wants, some talking head on TV that don't really know what he's talking about half the time is saying. Not all talking heads, just some of them right now. I've been really annoyed with some of the Caitlin Clark stuff that's been coming out. She didn't make the U.S. Olympic team. It's not a big deal at all. She's been struggling at times. I know she's the first to do this, first to do that. Look at her mentally, look at her physically. She is tired. She is worn. I mean, she didn't really get a break between playing in the Final Four to starting her WNBA career. It's hard. It's very, very hard. And when you know international play is different than the WNBA, and those girls overseas might be a little bit more physical and more skilled than what she's seeing right now, do you truly want to make marketing the fact over winning? No. Marketing is never more important than winning. Well, which is why when I hear people say, oh, put Bronny number 1 overall. Why? For marketing. He's going to sell tickets. First off, I question that thought. He's going to sell tickets. But number 2, it don't make no sense. What also don't make no sense is this game not being one of those games that doesn't shape college football in the upcoming season. Because you got to think about what we're talking about here. James Franklin, some people say he should be on the hot seat. I say, why? No. Unless Penn State wants to do what wants to be the next Nebraska, to fire a coach, let him go when he has this thing steady at 9-3 or 10-2, then all of a sudden, what is it? He might go 11-1 every now and then. Hey, it's a good year for you. It's a great year. 10-2 is a great year too. Not saying it's not for that school, for that school there. But this is one of those times. This is going to shape a lot. This game could realistically mean Ohio State has a bye. The outcome of it, Ohio State has a bye, or has a chance to get a bye, or Ohio State has a chance to host a home game in the playoff. This could be a game where Ohio State is in contention to host a home game in the playoff, to Ohio State having to go on the road in the playoff. I don't see Ohio State missing the playoffs in the upcoming season, so I'm just going to throw that scenario out there. Like, yeah, if Ohio State loses to Oregon, loses to Penn State, realistically, the Buckeyes could not host a game or get a bye. I don't see that happening, which is why your boy has not dove into the scenario. If it happens, we got major questions about Ryan Day, with the coaching staff, about the players, a lot of things. You can't put this roster together and then miss the playoffs. Like, that's a scenario that nobody, myself, Corey Thompson, Mo Murphy, Jeff Hunt, any of the guys we have here on the show that talk Ohio State football, that is something that nobody wants to discuss, because we might pull our hair out, and a lot of us don't have much hair to pull out. Michigan, the first game. Oregon, the second game. Penn State, the third game. That Ohio State's playing this year that I believe will shape the 2024 college football season. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Go ahead and join that subtext. There's a link in the show notes there. Join that, sign up, 14-day free trial, $4.99 a month after that, and literally let me know what you think. If you think these games will shape the college football season as a whole or not. And if you got any questions, I don't have to request them. Send them anyway. You might get your question answered on a future episode of Locked on Buckeyes. You can follow me on X at jstevens07. You can send every single email to jstevens317@gmail.com. We're out of here on a hump day. Buckeye fans, we will see you next time.